public places. It is sponsored by Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Daves. Mr. Daves could not be here today. I'm Gina Gregory. I'm the chair of public safety. Everyone except Mr. Daves is here from the city council. We have city council staff, as well as a few from the administration to begin this. So what I would like to do to get us going is to allow Mr. Reynolds an opportunity to tell us why he is proposing this ordinance and give us some details behind the ordinance. Then there will probably be some questions of Mr. Reynolds, but I also want to give Director Batiste and any of his staff an opportunity to speak to some of the requirements of the ordinance as well. And also, just as a side note, there is an amended version that is coming to us that Mr. Reynolds has. That amended version is being printed as we speak, and we will get that. But Ben, you can go ahead and speak to it in your...
All right, so the reason this came about is because in District 4, it has been a hot spot for camping, use of public rights-of-ways, and tents have been put up in various places, both on public and private property. There is a big litter problem, and so I began to research to see what other cities have done about this, and it turns out there's quite a bit of cities that have already started taking action on this public health concern. And so I did some checking, and I found Atlanta, the city of Atlanta, had an ordinance that is structured very much just like ours, and got into reading it and thinking, well, this is a good opportunity, good way for us to try to address this issue of camping and the storing of the property, or having the aesthetic displeasure throughout our community. And throughout my campaign, and even since, I've received numerous calls from people saying, look, we've had enough of this. We've had enough of our public property being public rights of ways being used as campsites. It's just come to a head. We've had enough of it. And so, I dug in and came up with this ordinance. And then I've been working with the council attorney to, research it and find out all the information I can. And I've got some information here regarding other cities that have done this. Of course, the 3 in Alabama that we looked up, Cullman, Decatur, and Gadsden. And then in Georgia, there are Albany, Atlanta, Americus, Duluth, Dunwoody, Eatonton, Lawrenceville, Madison, Quitman, Sewanee. And then there is a whole slew of them in Florida. The big ones are Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, Tampa, and then, the smaller ones, Coral Springs, Cape Canaveral, so on and so forth. So this is not an ordinance here that is doing anything extraordinary. This is something that cities across our country have adopted in order to try to eliminate this issue where, as we saw today, with all the folks came out today that were advocating for the homeless. And I want to first let everybody know that I want a good solution for the homeless as well. But what has happened is the broad general citizenry has this problem of camping in the rights of ways, the right of ways being used as a restroom, litter, aesthetics, so on and so forth. And then we have a homeless issue that has kind of come to a head on this, where there's this disagreement that exists. And I would love to say that I had a silver bullet solution to resolve homelessness and figure out a way to fix it, but there's not one that exists out there. There's not an easy solution to that. And I think all of our various stakeholders that are working every day on the homeless problem that exist in our city would agree that there is no easy solution to resolve it all. Certainly there's probably some things we could do better or more or whatever, but there's no easy resolution. So instead of waiting to find a solution to a problem that exists across our entire country and no one seems to be able to solve, before we take action on behalf of the people that elected us to do this job, I'm saying this allows us to take immediate action to start, to resolve the immediate public health concern. And then all of this discussion we've been having around this has now drawn additional attention to a homeless problem that exists. And after we get this baseline established, that we can agree that we don't want people living in our rights of way. We don't want camping. We don't want littering. We don't want all of that. If we can get this done, then let's tackle the bigger, broader discussion that needs to be had around homeless issues after that. So I hate that this has brought such attention in a negative context to this issue. I think this is a positive thing for our city, and I hope that all the groups that are represent the homeless can join me in having discussions and bringing forward possible solutions to a bigger homeless issue that exists. So that's kind of the preface and the idea behind it, and I'd be happy to answer whatever questions you all have and do my very best to try to answer.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
I'd like to ask Mr. Reynolds, when you was looking at different cities, Atlanta, et cetera, did they have a solution for homeless, in place for people that homeless or people that will violate, their rules, their ordinance? Did they have anything in place?
Well, I can't say that I know all of that for all the cities, but I will say there was a wide range of administrative policies that were put forward to say, enforce the ordinance and then accommodate others. Some of those were that if someone were to be cited or before they were cited, then alternative solutions should be put forward to them and say, and as our officers likely do anyways, and will continue to do, I'm sure, is to say, hey, look, you can't be here camping on the right-of-way. There are bed spaces open, at a whole slew or a number of nonprofits, or like our warming stations that were set up over the weekend that we do annually throughout the winter. So I don't know if that answers your question of, I don't know exactly that there is one solution that fits all the various cities that adopted a similar ordinance.
Because I'm sure that, just as well as controversy here in Mobile, that possibly there was others in other cities also. So my question is, was it, and if it wasn't, why? Is it because they already had things in place? Was it, different agencies out there that know exactly where to, take the people, the citizens, the people to those different agencies? I mean, that's the question that I really have, because I understand the outcry here in Mobile, especially when they saw this. But my question is, did the other cities have outcry? And if so, what did they do? Or did they have something already in place when it to conjunction with this to make it a more smooth transaction? That's the reason I asked those questions.
All right. Thank you, CJ. And Ben, I just echo what CJ said as you were talking about all of the cities that have this type of ordinance in place. I would love to be able to see what it is they do from the broader look, this type of ordinance and maybe others that they have. How do they resolve the issue in using this ordinance and others, just to compare the apples and apples together? Because if they have found a way to help resolve the issue, I would love to see what it is they do, so that we could try to match some of that with some maybe other programs or other methods to go along with something like your ordinance. But Keisha, maybe that's something that you can write a note about. I see you. That's why something that I think we need that information from the other cities, especially those that Ben has mentioned. If we could find out from them some basics of how they deal with, the issues that they have, along with an ordinance like what Ben has proposed. What are they doing? How are they able to resolve issues? Are they successful? What has been the impact? Those kinds of things.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Penn?
Excuse me. First of all, thank you, Councilman Reynolds, for, trying to help our community become better. I believe that that's something that you was trying to do. You wasn't trying to affect a certain group, but I do think it will affect a certain group. And some of my concerns is similar to what Councilman Small stated, is that you take Atlanta, they have many agencies that support homelessness. I think that we have to look at, before they made that ordinance or whatever they passed, they put something in place. They created solutions before they put an ordinance to affect certain communities. And so one of my concerns is that, are we going to just push the homeless somewhere else? One of the other concerns is, if they are homeless, how can they even afford to pay a fine? And one of the other concerns, is that we need to also understand that, yes, we have some litter issues, but honestly, a lot of this litter is coming from people who living in homes. And so I think that you definitely didn't want to affect the homeless community, but I do believe that it is affecting them, and we seen it today. So I would love to know any the cities that you did state. Have they put anything in place before they pass an ordinance similar to the one you're presenting today?
All right, so I'm looking at a list here. We actually do a lot as a city for the homeless and for various groups that can address this issue of where do they go. And I'm looking at a list here. This is a list that was formed, I think, in April or so of 2021. We'll get some additional information from Housing First at some point, but this is organizations that are in place to address homelessness. AIDS South Alabama South, Alta Point Health Systems, Dumas Wesley Community Center, Family Promise of Coastal Alabama, Gulf Coast Veterans Health Care System of Mobile, Housing First, McKinney Place, Mobile Area Interfaith Conference, Penelope House, Salvation Army, which they have, SA Bridge Housing, GPB, Clinical Program, GPP, Service Intensive, GPD, Salvation Army of Mobile, Volunteers of America has Eagles Landing, Veterans Residential TIP Stability Program, Waterfront Rescue Mission, and they have Mobile Rescue Mission Shelter. And as I'm looking at the utilization rates for these organizations, there are a few of them here that are at max capacity, but the majority of them are not. We're looking at 31% capacity for Sybil Smith Family Village, 27% at McKinney Place Shelter, 46% at Penelope House. So, and then there's a bunch with 20%, 29%, 10% utilization rates. So this draws my attention and makes me question. Okay, so if we have these accommodations that are in place currently, how are we dropping the ball between these folks that are choosing or are being forced or whatever it is to live on the rights of way, right? They are there, okay? How are we not connecting them with these housing, these sets up here where there's availability already, so something's not working. So I'm saying, okay, well, we're doing a lot. Some would say we're doing enough. Some would say we're not doing enough. But no matter what, as a baseline, we should all be able to agree that it's not healthy for a person to sleep on the right-of-way, for that person. It's not good for them. But it's also not good for the the remaining citizens either for them to be there. So if we can mutually agree on that, then, and we got availability for people to be in places, and we're constantly during the winter setting up more places, then how long do we wait before we say, okay, we've done what we can do. We're doing all that we know that we can do. It's time that we start intervening on behalf of the people that hired us to represent and say, all right, we're doing all these things, and now it's come to a head, So we don't want folks on our rights of ways sleeping, camping. We don't want our rights of ways being used as a bathroom with runoff that goes to our rivers. And litter, whether anybody wants to admit it or not, these encampments attract a ton of litter. And they're not aesthetically pleasing. So, we've got to push these folks out of this arrangement that they're living in and say, go to the services that have been provided. They're there. They're in place. Go for it. So that would be my answer, is that these other cities, I'm sure they do things. But so are we, and we have been for years. We're still doing those things. Those things should continue. I'm not saying we should stop doing that. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have a conversation about maybe there is something we should do more. But I am saying that enough's enough. It's time to say, okay, we've had enough. We need to start a baseline and say we can at least mutually agree that it's not healthy for anybody to be living on our rights. So that's my point, and I'm sure there may be a time where there's some adverse effect, maybe, because it's going to be tough decisions, having to push people out of these areas and into the help if they want it. But if somebody is actively choosing to live a lifestyle where they don't want to be a part of our community, our society, and they just want to go live and camp and do those sort of things, well, they shouldn't be taking advantage of the rest. So that's my point.
Madam Chair.
Okay, Mr. Penn.
Just I know many of those nonprofits because I work in the nonprofits area. A lot of those nonprofits are targeted. So some groups are not allowed, but depending on if you have kids, if you married, it's so many different options with a lot of it. So the reason why some of those numbers are low is because of that. I do agree with you, Councilman Reynolds, that I don't want people living on the street. And so, but we have to figure it out. I don't know if it's a program in place to make sure that they have the information to know where they can go. Because again, like I said before, a lot of some of the programs that you mentioned are targeted programs. They're not for, if you don't have any kids, you can't come into this particular program. And so we have to make sure that we have enough program for the target group. I just want to kind of respond to some of the programs that you did mention.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I don't disagree. Maybe there is a program gap that needs to be filled with all of this. I'm just saying, when do we say enough is enough? When do we start taking action? Do we wait around for how long? Do we just allow the problem to continue to be a problem and until we resolve this bigger, broader problem that, frankly, nobody's been able to resolve? So do we continue to put the mass of people in our city of 185,000? Do we put a large part of their concern just to the side until we address this problem that is a much smaller population? I say that we've reached that point, and this is a perfect segue after passing this ordinance and to start addressing some of those maybe program gaps or some other bigger resolution. So,
Madam Chair.
that's where I'm at on it.
All right. Mr. Jones?
I've lived a little over a year of my life in Waikiki Beach, Hawaii. Spent some significant time in California. Two locations that probably lead the nation in percent of homelessness per capita. And I've watched the same city councils address this very issue and wrestle with it and not resolve it. With that said, I have learned a lot by observing what they've done and the problems they've had and the reactions from policies that were put in place that went counter. You know, to Ben's point, we all took an oath to provide the safety and security of the residents of this city. And I think the heart of this gets after part of that. But with that said, when you look and break down homelessness, I think there's really three broad categories that these individuals fall in. One, really are down on their luck. They've lost jobs for whatever reason. They've been unable to maintain a home, and they find themselves on the street. But given the option, they would work to get back into a societal norm, have a home, etc. The second category are those that have some type, and we heard it today, have some type of mental health issue, mental defect, whatever, and need mental health resources in order to either get them better or just get them off the street altogether where they're not a danger to themselves or a danger to others. And then the third category, and we really haven't heard this today at all, and that's the ones who really have no will to assimilate to the social norms that everybody else does. And there's the three categories of homelessness. So how do you address that? You know, we've talked a lot about different programs. You know, how cool would it be when you see one of these hotels that looks like a rat motel and they go bankrupt or whatever, if the city could take that over and get all of these organizations that came in here today and spoke, and they get representatives into the admin building with the police, with the mental health advocates, with the job trade folks, and you put the homeless in that location, and if you don't go there, then get out of the city. Because then we're doing everything we possibly can to put you in a safe, secure environment and give you a path back to the societal norms that I think we all expect. And if you choose not to do that, then that's a choice that you make. And then along with that, you provide the health care, you provide the haircuts, you provide, you know, the work attire to get them whatever they want to do and the skill, and you put them on a path and you put a timeline on it. And I think we've got the capability to do something like that. And, you know, heard a lot of scripture talked in here today and a lot of pastors that talk about how we have a responsibility to care for the homeless. And I don't disagree. I've been in church my entire life. 9 months before I was born, I was in church. But the Bible also says, if a man will not work, he shall not eat. And there's an inherent requirement placed on us to do our part. So I think you have to look at both sides of this. And I think there's a lot of things we can do. And I would love to see this Public Safety Commission work with the city administration and all of you that are working with the homeless. And let's bring all these resources together and collaborate and figure out how to resolve this problem, because I think it can be done. I know it can be done. But we've got to, you know, we talk about greatness and we talk about, you know, making decisions that change the path of this city and put us on the map. Why can't we do something like that? And I think at that point, all of these things can be taken together, and this would be a part of that, because then there would be no need for that. And we would not need to have folks camping out on public spaces. Thank you.
Madam Vice President,
Mr. Small?
if I'm out of order, just stop me. But, I mean, we're not experts of all these charities and agencies. And I understand what Mr. Reynolds was saying, that there are different agencies out there. But my question is, and I want to ask Reverend Allgood, just answer the question. No more comments, Reverend, out of due respect. But isn't it a timeline where the homeless have so much time in a shelter? Because I think in McKinley Place, they have only a certain length of time to be there. Am I correct, Reverend? All good? Depends on the program. So how many programs is out there that say homeless can just be there all the time? I mean, all year? None. And that's what I figured. And that's the thing about it is that, you know, they allow in these programs for a certain length of time. And then after that, you know, they're out. But, you know, I understand what you said. Some people fall bad luck on, you know, and have, you know, bad times, which that's true. And those shelters are designed to help them to get stable, to go to the next level and et cetera. But we also have a big issue, which I have been advocating for the past 5 years, a minimum of the past 5 years, of mental illness that's out there. And some of those, you know, citizens that's out there that's camping does have mental illness, and there's nowhere for them to go. Searches is closed, Metro is full, and et cetera. So that's the reason, you know, that is so, Mr. Reynolds. Thank you, Madam.
Madam Chairman.
Mr. Carroll?
I don't know if I'm out of line. I probably missed a lot of the conversation. There's really no nice way to say this. There's no way to separate the current ordinance from homelessness. There's just absolutely no way to do it. I mean, the way it's currently written now, we would have to, I think, amend the ordinance to have some type of instrument in place to protect the homeless, or to have them go to a place optionally, not mandatory, because I think if we make it mandatory, it violates, I think, a portion of their civil rights. That's just like saying, if you can't pay the first $100 and the $500 and you do some jail time. So, but what we don't realize is it's not even considering the additional unintended consequences. Right now, Metro's full. Where are we going to put the homeless after we've arrested them so many times they have to go to jail? I mean, are we going to put them in jail on top of somebody else? Are we going to put 200 or 300 of them at a time in there when we find them camping somewhere? I mean, our system's already strained. Where are they going to go? I mean, and then on top of that, once we get them in there, they've got to go through the process. How do they pay their fines? They don't have a job, some of them do. They don't have resources. They don't even have an address to even receive the possible bench warrant that they would get after they meet their court date. So now, I mean, after they miss their court date twice. So now we even have a bigger problem. They have a bench warrant. For what? For sleeping under a tree? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, we are criminalizing people here for being poor. Being poor. It's not the right thing to do. Now, we can reword this. We can change it. We can amend it to make it where it may be more palatable to everybody. But right now, it doesn't make sense to criminalize someone for being poor. I was the president of the Family Counseling Center for 4 years, their board of directors. There were families that went from being okay to penniless, that were out on the street, that were sleeping in their cars, that we were assisting, that were homeless, that were sleeping in parks. What happens when we arrest them or fine them after they can't meet their debts twice and they're separated from their kids now? Families are pulled apart. And there are all kinds of unintended consequences that aren't even being considered with this ordinance. I think that there should be more thought, and it should be carefully looked at, because the weight of the unintended consequences right now are higher than the value that we're getting from picking up litter in public safety. Now, when I was here last time, the way we helped resolve this is we had dumpsters, portalettes, and wash stations where homeless camps had an opportunity to put their trash in dumpsters, use the portalettes, and also had wash stations for their hands. So it helped. It put a big dent in the problem that we had and that we're facing with the homeless. Today, you heard me ask, how much money do we have in the unfunded fund that we have? I think it was somewhere around $67 million. The cost of a dumpster a month is $325, and the cost of a portalet is $75. It does not cost us that much to provide additional resources to help those that can't help themselves. I mean, we are in the public service business. It's our job to be public servants, even to those that can't help themselves or provide homes for themselves. So right now, unless we restructure this, and I don't want to see it fail because we really have a problem. But right now, before we try to pass this, it has to be restructured so that I can see fit to move forward with it. Because I'm not in favor of vilifying or criminalizing anyone that can't even provide for themselves right now. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Reynolds, go ahead.
Yeah, so I, put an amendment for it. This is what this committee is here for. Put something forward that addresses the issue for, the folks that, are camping. If we need to protect their rights, additionally, then put something forward. But I can tell you that my folks have just had enough of it. It's time to take some sort of action, and instead of just discussing it to the end until we resolve the broader homeless issue, it's time to take some sort of action on it, and not sweep this one under the rug and just let the status quo continue. It's, if I've now put something forward to this body that says this is a starting point for my constituents, and I see it as a solution that resolves their concerns. Okay, you're saying that your constituents, would like to see something different. Well, what is that? Let's put it on the floor and let's vote it. Let's let the will of the people shine through. But I don't want to continue to try to resolve the broader homeless issue that exists. No doubt about it, it exists. At the expense of this problem that we all admit exists, and that is camping on the right-of-ways, litter, public health concern, the public safety concern. I don't want to continue to allow that to be a problem either. So we need to get on with some sort of solution. So I request from any of my fellow council people that if this is not palatable, if this ordinance that I put forward is not palatable, although this ordinance represents a lot of other cities, and it's the same exact wording, if that's not palatable to your constituents, put something forward that resolves the issue. This is what I've come up with.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Jones?
Question for Chief Batiste. What organization do we have in the city administration that has any oversight of this issue? Is it health department? Who oversees the homeless in the city and the issue there?
So there are a number of agencies within the city that work with the homeless. The health department does this part. The city of Mobile, we assist with, police department helps with the point-in-time count, trying to identify the homeless in our community. And there are a number of other social agencies within the city of Mobile that helps with trying to identify that homeless population. I think it came up earlier that, there are a lot of organizations, we talked about Penelope House and some of the other places like that, but Penelope House is usually for battered women. And so again, all of the different agencies that exist, they do have a specific population that they try to work with. And probably the most underserved group of all of the, as we talk about homeless in general, is going to be the adult male. There are not a lot of shelters that truly focus on homelessness with adult males, unless you're dealing with substance abuse with the Salvation Army and things like that there, with 12-step programs and things of that nature there.
Thank you. To Ben's point, I think this is a great springboard to lead us in a direction that we need. I recommend formally that we have a follow-on meeting with these organizations that have the oversight of this issue with the city administration and any other organizations that want to be involved in that discussion, that we can start outlining, number one, the scope of the problem. I know they're doing a count. I think that's a great start point, and that helps us identify the scope of the issue. And I think they categorize during the count. So we should have some analytics behind those numbers as well. So maybe after that count is complete, we could reconvene, identify the scope of the problem, and then let's figure out actively how we address this as a committee on the city council and move forward. That's my recommendation.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Yeah, just a question. Are you saying that delay the vote on this ordinance until we've done that?
Yes. I would delay this as part of a bigger resolution that would encompass this problem as a whole.
To keep it from failing, I would support that.
Did you say you'd support that?
To keep it from failing, yes.
Okay.
But it must be, when we restructure the ordinance, we must have a clear path forward to support homelessness. The chair has to do that, and she laid down the rules already. I'm sorry, Madam Chairman, but my Uncle Bubba, Willie Samuel Hayes, Army Lieutenant, Vietnam, Agent Orange destroyed. Man couldn't live in a house to save his life. He tried to kill me twice. That was for teasing him about with I don't know what they speak in Vietnam, but with that language. My mother would put him in the garage. He'd break out. He'd live in front of Church's Chicken on Michigan Avenue. Most of y'all know him. Y'all know him by the name of Wild Thing. That is my uncle. Homeless, but not homeless. But you want to make people like him a criminal. From the day we passed this ordinance. It doesn't work like that. Everybody has an issue or a problem. Everybody has a family member that may have an issue or a problem. But once again, it is our job to be public servants, to stand up for those that can't stand up for themselves, to speak up for those that can't speak for themselves. So today I'm speaking for those that can't speak for themselves because they're not here right now. So if we want to see this pass and help people, then let's find a way to somewhat help the homeless situation as we go forward to make this happen.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I can't just let it pass. Look, if you can always vote it down. You can look at your constituents right now and you can tell them, look, I'll tell you what, this public health concern we have, this public safety concern we have, this using our public rights of ways as bathrooms and trash cans, those issues don't rise enough to the level to pass an ordinance that makes as much sense as this one does. So as much as I'd love to just continue to delay this thing, or as everybody would like to just continue to delay this thing and just try to find some resolution for a problem that no one has found a resolution to in our entire country. There is no resolution to resolve the issue of homelessness. It does not exist. There are solutions that are put forward that have helped mitigate it. And it has cost taxpayer money like you wouldn't believe, and they still have a problem with homelessness. It just is, there is no resolution to it. So we can continue the discussion, we can kick the can, we can kick it further and further and have committee meeting after committee meeting and never find a resolution for the constituents that are out there. Right now in Tillman's Corner, there are homeless encampments scattered all about. These are where our rivers come and tie into our community. They're being littered in. Human waste is being, dumped there day after day after day. And the problem doesn't need to be delayed any further. So, take a vote. Vote it down. If that's what your constituents hired you to do, then vote it down.
What do we
hang on. Any more? You want to? Is that it? Is that okay?
I've stated my case.
All right. Now I heard Scott. I heard you, Mr. Carroll, CJ. You want to?
Yeah.
Corey, I think I know where you stand, but go ahead.
Look, if y'all want to lay the
I
thing
agree with
over a week or whatever, that's fine to try to reach some resolution. I'm okay with that. But to continue to have committee meeting after committee meeting to reach a resolution for a problem that there is no resolution for, we're just prolonging a vote. So I'm okay with holding it over a week or two, so that amendments can be brought forward to try to make it more palatable. And, I'd love to meet with some of the organizations out there and have them give their input, but you got to meet me halfway. You got to meet me somewhere. We can't just be all one way or the other. So I'm okay with holding it over, but, we don't need to just continue to have committee meetings on this thing and never reach a resolution. Like, it's time to take action on it.
Okay, but before we get to making that decision specifically, I have a couple of things that were brought up that I'd like to just get some clarification on. Some of it would be logistics, with this. Who's in charge in going out and checking to see where the encampments are and if they're on the right of way, moving people along. Who does that? How do you do it? Are there buses involved? I think logistics is an issue. We also had some questions and comments about dumpsters, portalets, trash cans, that kind of thing. And Casey is probably better, or Chief Barber, between the two of you. How does something like that work? How do you put a dumpster up? What are the rules? And then how do you get it dumped? How do you get it in the right place? Same thing with garbage cans. Where do we put them? How are they emptied? What happens if they're overflowing? Who's going to take all that responsibility? There was one other thing that I was looking at, trying to figure out on some of these things that were suggested as possible, at least stopgap, if nothing else. If belongings are found on the right-of-way or on public property, nobody's around, do we look at that as litter, illegal dumping, or do we just automatically assume these belong to people who are coming back and we don't touch them? Some of these are just questions that I think should come up in any of these, in Ben's proposal, because it speaks to that. But the dumpsters and trash cans, washlets, whatever you call them, might be something we could look at doing if possible, if we can make all the, logistics work, if that's something that is of interest, to the city and to this committee. Anybody?
I can't address the dumpster issue now. I will say, in my discussion with the executive branch, the administration, they did bring forward some changes. One of those, I guess this has been distributed to y'all.
It has, yeah.
Okay,
Chris
red
gave
line.
them out, yeah.
Okay,
If y'all
so
have them.
In the red line, one of the issues, on the first page was how the property were to be handled, and the idea is that the property would just be handled as litter, and not, it's just property, essentially abandoned property. So that would be on that's that first page change. And then also on the second page, it just goes, that big paragraph there that's struck through, it just goes to that very thing, that it would be just essentially property, would be treated as if it were litter. As to Mr. Carroll's comments that he made early on, and that was camping in parks with Girl Scout troops, that sort of thing. You look at item B, it shall be unlawful for any person to camp. The additional language was added in this red line version you see without a permit, but my suggestion would be, and this is with working with the council attorney, was that it would say, it shall be unlawful for any person to camp without a permit issued by the city's executive director of public works or his designee. So it would define that process of where that permit would come from. And then there was, as a result of how the property was handled, item C was struck through, so it's no longer necessary. And then item E would be with regard to the property, the warning section removed from the ordinance. And then on the final page there, it modifies the fine for this, or the penalty for this. And it essentially just says up to $500, not to exceed $500, and imprisonment for a period not to exceed 6 months. And then it takes away these amendments to our existing code. Essentially what it does is it takes municipal enforcement out of this. You know, the city is not equipped to send municipal enforcement officers and policemen out there, you know, for these violations. It's essentially just gives the policeman the opportunity to go out there and assess the situation and, you know, is there a crime being committed or not. And essentially it would require that this person, if they did, they'd have to go before a judge, essentially. They go before the judge, and the judge would then impose, you know, whatever sentence he saw fit. But I will say this, I have sat in municipal court. We just hired municipal judges. Our municipal judges want to find a resolution to these sort of issues just as we do. And the likelihood that they're going to be imprisoning these folks over $500 or $200 and not trying to find some resolution for them and connecting the dots, connecting them to services is very slim. That's what they're trying to do as well. But what this does is it takes people who are camping in the right-of-way and they put them in front of the judge, who is then trying to help them find services. It connects them to services, but it forces them to come, you know, reacclimate, be a part of the society. It doesn't allow folks to just continue to live on the rights-of-way of our streets. So this is a very clear path here to say we don't want people living on our rights-of-ways, using it as a restrooms, littering, and so forth. We're going to intervene by sending a police officer out there and say, hey, you are in breach of the law. You got to go see the judge. They go see the judge. The judge tries to connect them. This is a way that government works. And I hope that we can reach some sort of resolution here to find, you know, a solution for my constituents and yours too. That's it. That doesn't address the dumpsters and stuff. I don't know anything about
that didn't address dumpsters. Casey, since you're raising your hand and sitting there, do you have anything you want to? Yeah, I would be interested in hearing about the stopgaps, what we can do and where we could do those. Ben, in Tillman's Corner, is that private property or is that city right away? Where's the encampments you were
Both.
mentioning? Both?
Yeah, oh yeah, both under our bridges, Highway 90 and I-10. I mean I-65. That's a hot spot. I mean,
I,
Yeah.
but this is, I mean, we're seeing it pop up just all over, just literally on the side of the road. You know, I'm not talking about just these big encampments that are existing under bridges. I'm talking about just as you're driving down just a 2-lane road. I mean, literally right there in the ditch. You know, somebody has just decided that that's where they're going to camp. You know, and so that can't be something that our citizens want. And I know that it's not. And that has been popping up more and more in my area, you know, as this problem continues to progress. So there is a private property problem as well, you know, but this is about public property.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
do we have anybody from Housing First here?
no, it's
Do we have anybody that is familiar with the count that's going on? Okay, do you know how long it will be before you think we'll have data available to get back from that? That's all, just 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Okay, thank you. One thing I'd like to see, and I'm looking at our calendar, Madam Chairwoman, I don't see anything on March the 2nd, which is, I think, the first opportunity we'd have to reconvene. But one thing I think would be very beneficial, we've heard a lot of information provided today that we don't have a lot of information when we look at that laundry list of all these organizations that provide services, what the extent and timeline of those services are. So between now and that meeting, if we could get that data, and I don't know if, Lisa, if you could send an email out to these organizations, and if they could provide back to us what the scope of their capabilities and services that they provide are, so we can collate all of that and come up with a comprehensive list of all the service providers in this city and what they do and what they provide. The next meeting, I think we could take a look at what capabilities that we have compare it to the problem that we have in line with everything that we're hearing, Ben. And that will, I think, give us a very good start point. And, you know, Ben, to your point, no, we don't need to keep dragging this out. But I think we've got to understand what this problem is so we can address it. And I don't think it takes a lot of time, energy, and, you know, it will take a lot of energy and effort. But I don't think this is going to be a year-long process as long as we stay after it. And I think if this is a priority for us, we can resolve this in working with the city administration and all of these others to figure out how do we get after this. But I think there's a lot more to it than just what we have in this ordinance that we've got to address. And, you know, we can't keep addressing the symptom of the problem. The problem is, why are they homeless? And, you know, again, I think I've already addressed the categories there. And that's, you know, for those that have no desire to assimilate, then they're on their own. And we'll figure out who those are. But the ones who do want to assimilate, that do have a problem, I think we've got ways that we can help them. And I think that's what we need to look at.
And also in with that, the mental health portion of that, the resolution that we had today with University of South Alabama and the mental health, I can't remember all the details on that, but do we work with them on mental health issues that would include homeless people? Are they going out in the field? Are they working with groups like these?
So you're talking about the Alta Point collaboration with Mobile Police Department. That is a stepping up program to teach officers, provide training for officers in dealing with mental health as they encounter calls for service.
Okay, because there may be another group that we already provide funding to, or maybe not, that could help us better work with, and you all may be able to help us with this as well, working with people who are homeless, who are experiencing some mental health issues, and could be the reason why they are homeless or living on the streets at this point. I think that's something that we need to find more information about. And then how do we, as the city and a funding source, obviously, work with that? Yes, ma'am, go ahead. I would think it's transportation. Huh?
That is absolutely not.
Wait, hey, yeah.
I mean,
Okay, before we go,
it's total not true.
well, before we go any further, and you have some great information, I appreciate that. I think what we need to do is move forward the way it has been suggested, lay it over till March 2nd. We will get it more information. I think if you have some information that you can share with us, the day room, I do remember 15 Place, and the ability for people who are homeless to come in and get information and get the things that they need, I think is very important, obviously. So if you can share your information with us, if you've got some documents, bullet points, we'd be happy to hear from you, and we can use that as we move forward. In the meantime, any questions, suggestions, Casey on dumpsters, Keisha, other information, and anything else you all want to look at, let's go ahead and do that and see if we can come up with some amendments or whatever we need to do in order to provide public safety as well as protect everybody's constitutional rights within the city.
Madam Chairman.
William?
I don't know if it would be worthwhile to put the homeless advocates in a room with somebody or someone and try to come up with some structured document so that we're not all trampling, or not all of them are trampling over each other trying to get to a solution or some type of amendment that makes this work. Kind of sending it all to us. I'm not a homeless expert. I don't know if we have anybody within the administration that's a homeless expert either. So it might be worth our while to have them put in a room somewhere between now and March 2nd and have them maybe give us a possible solution to what we can possibly move forward with.
And I think that might be a good idea if we could maybe ask Anitra and some of her crew to look at that, because what we probably have is organizations who may do similar things, same things, maybe some overlap. I know some programs have certain restrictions that are different than other programs. For our benefit, I think we need that information, but as we go forward, if we are going to try to put a dent in the problems that we have here, all of the groups need to work together and not be worried about, I do this, I'm not going to do something else, or being protective of what they do. We all need to come together united in this if we are going to make a dent in the problem.
Yes, ma'am. And one other statement. Just I want to add somebody to this.
So you're talking to me?
Yes, ma'am, because you're in charge.
Answer the phone call, William. I thought I heard it.
You're in charge. Please add Mike Dow and is it Johnny Williams? Went to St. Mary's. His kids
Dan Williams.
Yeah, he's at his kids are at St. Mary's with mine, because homeless veterans also play a big part of this, and they can't be. The whole process needs to be inclusive of everyone. Well, if you would just reach out to everybody.
Yeah, I think you get the idea. If that's something that she and her group can work on and help us.
Whose group?
Anitra.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know.
I'm not asking you. I'm talking to the director. I know. Okay. And then she can be in touch with us to let us know if there's anything that she needs from us or what involvement she would like from us as well. Okay. All right. Is that okay? March 2nd, lay it over, and we'll be working on it. Okay. All right. We're adjourned.
Committee Chair, this is non-related to the camping ordinance.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. It's just informational. It was a comment that Councilman Carroll made during council about providing access to the redistricting map 2.5, and so that has been accomplished. And so 2.4 and 2.5 are now in the archives of the site that you saw this morning. So they are available in PDF form. The interactive form, that's going to take a while because 2.5 didn't exist until this morning. So if you'll give us some time to get the interactive, we'll put it on there. And we'll keep archiving as we proceed to work with y'all on the districts.